Right, good to see everyone. I'm here to talk to you about the future of town centres. I was here a couple of years ago to give you my feelings on where town centres are going. I tried to scare the life out of you in terms of the level of change. It obviously didn't work, so you've invited me back, so I'm going to try again. So I've updated the presentation just on the basis of some of the things that have happened in the past few years. So just quickly, ATCM membership organisation, cover about 300 town centres and high streets across the UK and Ireland. Kettering is a member. Wonderful. And we are also the ones that are under Purple Flag accreditation scheme, which is now international with towns across the UK, Sweden, Ireland, hopefully by the end of this year New Zealand as well. But there's a lot to cover, so forget all that. Here we go. There are three big structural challenges we have for all of our town centres, and I think a lot of you will know a lot of them. These are the basics, this is the foundation, these are the core weaknesses for town centres. A lack of private investment, largely because of an outdated corporate tax system, led by none other than business rates, which I think for many businesses, they will be no friend of. Business rates helps to set the life out of investment in terms of commercial property. We've had challenges in terms of public funding over the past 10 or so years since the recession, so that means local authorities and other public services, we have struggled in terms of investment in town centres. And finally, the whole reason why ATCM exists, our raison d'etre, is about trying to piece together management in town centres, because fundamentally, no one owns a town centre. Their management, their ownership, it's fragmented from businesses, various departments within a local authority, landowners, people who are working transport operators. Everybody has a role in supporting, shaping, managing a town centre, but there is no one unified body, which means it's a challenge to put together a unified vision. So they're the structural weaknesses we have to deal with day to day. However, those weaknesses have been greatly exacerbated and exposed by the growth in competition in terms of commercial destinations from out of town to online. And we're at a place where we still haven't quite gotten over those core weaknesses, and yet we are now having to deal with new challenges on the horizon. And I'll try to distill it down to three core things which I think are really, really hard work for a lot of areas at the moment. And the scary thing is for some of these challenges, there are many town centres out there that haven't even recognised these changes are happening. Firstly, we need to talk about young people. They are a pain in the backside. Millennials, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, they are causing us headaches. So let's start from the beginning. Alison, I can see you there. Don't put your hand up for this because I know what your answer is going to be. How many people in this room know who this person is? Really?
I can't remember his name, but...
Oh, okay. So who is he then?
He's a YouTuber.
Absolutely, yes. So you do know who he is. I'm going to take that. So we've got one yes. Alison, I'm going to assume you're a yes. We've got sort of half yes. This guy is James Charles. James Charles is a YouTuber. His role on YouTube is to help people do their own makeup. He teaches kids how to do their own makeup, DIY makeup. He calls his following on YouTube his sisters. He is what we call a social media influencer. Social media influencer, let's all be honest, I'm with friends here in these four walls, it's not a real job title. Let's be honest. You know, CEO, doctor, engineer, physicist, they're proper jobs. They're proper jobs. Social media influencer, not a proper job title. Let's just say that. The only reason why I know about James Charles is because just over a year ago, he booked himself to come over to Birmingham Bullring to open up a makeup store for 20 minutes. He was just going to open up the makeup store and leave again. Birmingham Bullring said, yeah, that's fine. Oh, by the way, there might be some interest from kids. That's fine. They sold about 800 tickets. They sold out their entire allocation for kids to come along and see him open up a makeup store for 20 minutes. They could not get their heads around the fact that they'd sold all the tickets so quickly. They're like, wow, well, okay. So 800 kids are going to turn up to see this random guy open up a makeup store. 8,000 kids turned up on the day. It brought the Birmingham Bullring to a standstill. It brought Birmingham city centre to a standstill because of congestion. I have spoken to the manager of the Bullring since. She says that they monitor CO2 levels within the Bullring, and at the very point in which James Charles appeared, there was a huge spike in the CO2 because all the kids let out a big scream all at the same time. What on earth is going on? The only reason why I know about this story is because on the way, I think it was James O'Brien from LBC, heard about this story, was on the radio going, what on earth is this? Who is James Charles? Somebody phone in and tell me what on earth's going on in Birmingham. James Charles happened to be in the taxi on the way back to Birmingham Airport to head back to the States when he heard this particular radio segment and rang in himself and explained everything. The world is changing. Social media has changed the game, especially for a younger generation. It's just we haven't seen it yet. We are completely invisible to it. But the game has already changed. It's not that it's changing, it's already changed. One of the best examples I can give of this is coming up. I think problem number one, challenge number one, is we are undergoing a social revolution. The dynamics of power in the economy have completely changed. And the best example I can give you is this one. How many people know who this is? How many people have seen this kid? A few. I'm assuming you've got kids.
Yeah.
Ryan, he is the face of Ryan's Toys Reviews. He plays with toys on YouTube. Kids watch him playing with toys. Kids buy the toys he is playing with. He's quite popular. On YouTube, he has had over 40 billion views. By the way, that was from the middle of last year when we had someone senior from YouTube come to present at our flagship conference last year. By that stage, he'd had over 40 billion views. He is a multi-millionaire at the age of 8 years old. He is worth $22 million because the toy companies know how powerful he is. So rather than go through the usual retail channels, they will pay Ryan handsomely to promote their products through his YouTube platform. YouTube will also play him because he brings through viewers. That means more ad revenue. Ryan is rich. James Charles, at the age of 20, also a multi-millionaire. Social media influencer, I take it all back, I have made the wrong career choice. This should have been my career. Honestly, the game has changed. Ryan, worth $22 million at the age of 8, at a time where the Toys R Us business model is no longer viable. Figure that one out. That is a change in terms of how retail works. The average cost of a sponsored video now on YouTube, as of 2019, was nearly $7,000. So for me, as a social media influencer, if I wanted to put out a video promoting something, the average income I would make from just that one video, nearly $7,000. And that's up from $420 in 2014. You can see how quickly it's going. I don't know if that's sustainable. I don't know how much growth there is left in that. But you can see the level of change we've had in the market. Take Alex and Olivia. Who's fan of Love Island here? Who loves Love Island? Oh guys, come on. I thought I was with a sensible audience. Anyway, Alex and Olivia. So after their successes on Love Island, they were planning on getting hitched. Hotels.com knew the benefits in this. They begged them, they pleaded with them. We will pay for everything. Just promote, just plan everything, plan your hen and stag do through us and get everything on your Instagram account. Because they've got a combined Instagram following of 3 million people. So Hotel.com commissioned them to plan their hen and stag do's through them, and through that they reached an audience of 3.3 million. No traditional route to market. This is all being changed by social media. There are projections now that the social media influencers will earn around about $10 billion this year. It is a massive growing industry and it is completely changing the way our economies work, and that includes high street retail, and it isn't even just retail. Instagram in particular, just the filter, just the power of a filter has had massive implications for things like which destinations we will go and visit, where we will go on holiday. This Paul Smith boutique in the States was one of their poorest performing stores until someone decided to put this sort of pastel pink colour on the side of the building. Instagrammability. Queues were going around the corner for people to take their photo with this store, and the exposure the store has had since has been massive. So they've gone big and put pride colours along the other side. The amount of attention that store now generates just because on the outside it's Instagrammable is massive. There are industries popping up because they see the benefits of using Instagram. Insta-friendly pop-up museums driving footfall. There was this case in Bradford, which was on the BBC website, where they found young people going out to restaurants, going out to cafes, not for alcohol, but if there's nice mood lighting, if they sell fancy desserts, if they can have a great social experience, take some great photos, get them up on Instagram, they will turn out in their droves. I wasn't sure about this as a story until I spoke to one of the franchise directors from Brew Coffee. So this is the brew in Leicester. And the guy told me, they do a similar thing, lots of fancy desserts in the evening. They told me this is how their takings break down. In the morning, 20 to 25% of their takings during the day are achieved. Same in the afternoon. In the evening, they take everything else. So half or more of their takings all take place from 7 o'clock onwards. And that is just people enjoying a dessert, taking photos, no alcohol involved. And it is all about the power of having a good social media profile. The average cost of a sponsored photo on Instagram has gone from £104 in 2014 to over £1,200 in 2019. That's just for taking a picture to promote a particular product or service. So this is a social revolution which, let's be honest, probably couldn't happen if it wasn't for the technology that sits behind those changes in those power dynamics. And that change is continuing at a pace. So I think this year, sorry, that slide was actually done last year. This year, mobile commerce is predicted to take the majority of online shopping. So that's people shopping less through websites and almost entirely through their smartphone. The majority of that taking place through their smartphone. So this technology is evolving and it's changing consumer behaviour. Hospitality is not immune. Other sectors aren't immune. Leisure, food. We know these apps are having a big impact in terms of the way people engage with food on town centres. And I'll be honest, we're so early in this journey, I cannot tell you all the answers to what type of impact the likes of Just Eat and Deliveroo are having on town centres and the hospitality sector. I know that innovation in apps is completely changing consumer behaviour, but in what ways, I don't have the. I think if anybody tells you they have all the answers, they are probably lying because that change is just never ending. One of the big things, I think, is obviously Airbnb is changing the hospitality industry in terms of hotels. But something we need to recognise is actually the technology that sits behind Airbnb. It's the concept, the sharing economy. The sharing economy has a lot of potential to grow. And the sharing economy has a lot of potential, again, to completely transform how sectors like retail actually works. If people want to share goods rather than purchase new goods. And even transport. So I've spoken to the guys from Uber and they have big plans for completely reforming how transport works, getting into public transport and car sharing. Again, technology is able to drive change in a lot of sectors, which greatly impact town centres. And then there's what we're calling social e-commerce. And that is basically where social media firms understand their power in terms of being a key route to market for a lot of people and decide to own the entire consumer behaviour decision-making process. From someone thinking, oh, that's a nice product to have, to them actually being able to purchase it directly through that social media platform. And I think that's the way a lot of social media platforms are now going, because it increases their ability to earn revenue. It is an ecosystem. It is that social revolution being driven by a technological revolution which drives a social revolution, and it is never ending. And it's important for us to know, when you take a step back, some of the key changes in trends that sit behind a lot of this. So quietly, one of the things that has been happening is our relationship to currency, our relationship to money is changing. And we don't talk about this enough because this is huge. Without cashless, online shopping wouldn't really be a thing. If we were still all reliant on cash, online would be much more difficult to do, much harder to trade online. But cashless is growing. I think there are some people now predicting that cash could disappear quite quickly. And it's transforming the way our high streets work. We are running out of cash, and the ramifications for which I don't even know yet. The British Retail Consortium say that actually for a while now, less than half of all our transactions with retailers take place using cash. And because that figure is changing so quickly, there are already businesses that have said they will not take cash anymore. Just simply because when the levels start to get down to probably taking 20% or less of your transactions in cash, for a business when it comes to counting up at the end of the night, when it comes to the security in place to look after that cash and transporting it to a bank, it just doesn't become viable to work with cash anymore. So we are looking at the prospect of a cashless society before not too long without some form of radical change. And so we start to question, what about those businesses and those consumers who are reliant on cash? What about a transition for them? There is so much we need to think about with this change. And that's probably not even the biggest thing, because now we have currencies which aren't even pound sterling. We have digital currencies which are completely different, completely unregulated. And ultimately, while I'm not touching cryptocurrency anytime soon, I don't know about you guys, there's a younger generation which could have a very different view and completely transform how this economy works in a different way. And that is introducing entirely new currencies which people use to trade. And I don't know how you regulate it. That's all about the relationship between the buyer and the seller, and if they trust cryptocurrency, they will use cryptocurrency or whatever the digital currency it might be. So 1 in 4 kids under the age of 18 believe digital currencies are the future. And we'll be monitoring that stat to see how it changes. So the second big challenge, looking at the role of technology, is to acknowledge we are in the middle of an industrial revolution. And it is pretty significant. And I think it's not slowing down, it's getting faster, it's getting quicker. We have spoken to Ronan Harris, who's the Managing Director of Google in the UK. And one of the things he's quite keen to tell us is that the next big thing the tech giants are working on is making technology as open and as easy as possible for people to use. So they can create their own innovations, they can build their own apps, they can build their own programs around artificial intelligence. They're trialing it, and so far it's been successful. There was the case of a farmer in Japan who was able to develop his own artificial intelligence program into a series of robots which were then able to select cucumbers based on whether they were ripe or not. This is a farmer. This is not someone with not necessarily great technical skills or abilities, but this plug and play technology is so easy to use that for the next generation to build their own artificial intelligence programs or apps, it's going to be as easy for them to do that as it is for us to open up a Word document and start typing. That is the end game for a lot of these tech giants. It is the democratization of technology. And that means, in terms of innovation, it just becomes an avalanche. It has already started. The amount of huge innovations out there and the pace in which they come to market is staggering. And they're all abstract. They are completely blind to the health of a town or a city centre. But their ramifications, each of them, are huge. They're absolutely massive. So try being the person that's going to predict what impact any of these innovations will have on a town centre in relation to everything else that's happening all at the same time. 1 in 4 kids already know how to code. I don't even know what coding is. 73% of 4-year-olds own their own tablet device. It's scary. It is absolutely scary. My girl, she was 2 last weekend. She'd already had her own tablet device for a few months before that. I didn't buy it. I don't agree with it, but it was a present from my mum. Over 80% of all children are online in some capacity. This is a generation that by the time they reach double figures, they'll be fairly fluent when it comes to using technology, being online, using smart devices. This could well be an everlasting industrial revolution, at least until the end of society. Which nicely brings me on to my next topic. Does anybody know what this represents? Nope. It does. I thought this the other day. It does look a little bit more like a barcode. It's not a barcode. Sort of, yes, in a way. This is a graphical representation of climate change. On the far left, what you have is the annual temperature, average temperature for the UK back in 1884, and the temperature since every year up until 2018 using UK Met Office figures. So you use vertical stripes to monitor the change in temperature across the UK. So this has been done across the globe for just about every country, and all of the visual representations look fairly similar. It's all heading the same way. Blue on the left, red on the right. We are facing a climate emergency, and have no doubt the ramifications for town centres for this are absolutely massive. So the third and final point is a climate emergency. Now there will be changes. The Climate Act 2008 has been amended, so we have to be carbon neutral by 2050. It is legally binding, and that means town centres will need to change, because ultimately town centres, as hubs of human activity, are big carbon emitters. But at the same time, because of density, because of efficiency per person, they are actually some of the most sustainable places. So it's a weird dynamic. That makes town centres both problems and solutions. If we are to get to carbon neutral, if we are to ensure our town centres are carbon neutral, everything has to change. We have to think about the processes of consumption, the buildings and the way they use energy, transport, mobility, waste, everything. There is not a single thing I can think of relating to climate change that doesn't impact a town centre. It will all have to be transformed in the next few years. And it's all probably going to have to happen fairly quickly as well. I think we've already seen anecdotally some of the extreme weather events, even over just the past few weeks, have been pretty massive. And ultimately, it's great to do events to bring people into the town centre, to make sure we have empty shop schemes, to make sure a place looks vibrant even if we're suffering from vacancies. But the level of change we are looking at is fundamental. Ultimately, if we are successful in that change, it means town centres will look completely different in the future. And we could see things like this changing parking infrastructure as just one example. Or it could mean we see scenes like this. This was taken only a few days ago. This is York. I think for a lot of people across Yorkshire and the North West, this has been a fairly common image in the past few weeks. And we've got members right across Yorkshire who are suffering from this problem. And of all the will in the world, there is nobody investing in your town centre if that is something which happens on a fairly frequent basis. So everything from adaptation to the extreme weather events we're already suffering from, to mitigation to stop any further damage. They're the things we are going to have to deal with, and a lot of that work is going to have to be done for our town centres. So just to recap, social revolution, industrial revolution, and a climate emergency. And we have to deal with these challenges at a time where we haven't even overcome some of those fundamental problems of governance and private and public investment. So on that really happy note, I'm glad to give you all my positivity. That is it from me. Thank you very much.